Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. In studio with me is Penna Dexter, and we're actually doing today an anniversary show. A while back, somebody said, why don't you do an anniversary show? And I said, yeah, why don't we do an anniversary show? So we haven't done anything like this other than maybe once a long, long time ago when Marlon Maddox was the host. We thought it might be a great opportunity, first of all, for those of you that are somewhat new to the program. Maybe you've only listened a few months and wonder a little bit about the history or why we do what we do. Some of you that remember the old days will love to reminisce with us, but we really want to give you an opportunity to join the conversation. We're going to have a chance over the next 2 hours to hear from a number of individuals. You'll be able, if you watch the program, to see some of these on video. Others will just be audio clips, but it's a great opportunity for us to maybe to celebrate 43 years, because Marlon Maddox started this program called Point of View back in September of 1972, if you can believe that. And that is something that has had a tremendous legacy. And of course, Penna Dexter, we've always said that we listened to the show even before we were ever on the show. And here we are actually doing the program.
I think that's appropriate to remember that, Kerby, because this program has left a legacy, and we have sort of a goal to help believers understand how they can impact the culture. You and I, in different spheres, were, motivated to do that. But this show helped us with information and with motivation. And, that's what we continue to do. And, it's biblical to commemorate things, to commemorate what God has done. And, God really built this program. It was the idea of one man, Marlon Maddox, who we'll talk about. But it's also been something that he has continued and allowed to continue throughout the years. And so I think it's going to be, I'm so excited I'm able to be here today to be included in this anniversary sort of, in a sense it's a tribute, I think, to the Lord and what he's done and what he continues to do.
Well, again, we're going to spend some time, obviously, talking about a few issues, but we most importantly want to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. Maybe some of you have already noticed as you go to our website that we wanted to know how Point of View has impacted you. Many of you that received an email that went out yesterday, and then maybe even a notification that just went out a few minutes ago, encouraging you to call. So we really want to hear from you, but we recognize maybe we need to, if you will, prime the pump for just a few minutes. And this isn't something we do very often. Penna, I've thought about the fact that whether it was Marlon Maddox or you or me or anybody else, we don't spend a lot of time talking about ourselves. You listen to some talk shows and they talk about their favorite team and who they had lunch with, and they tell all these stories, and maybe that helps you develop a relationship with them. But we've always felt that the issues were important. People that have been listening to this program for years probably could not tell individual, maybe wouldn't be able to say what your husband's name is, what my wife's name is, how many kids we have. They don't really know that much. It's not like we keep it private, but we just are so focused on these issues. So was Marlon, because after all, we don't take for granted that these 2 hours are valuable, and we really want to get the information out so that people can make a difference.
Well, 2 hours sounds like a long time, but 2 hours goes so fast when you're doing this show. And, we have so many things to talk about. I do think that's the reason. I do remember Marlon Maddox, who founded the program, would talk about Mary. People knew when he said Mary, that Mary was his wife. She was the executive producer of this show for many, many years. Yeah. And, of course, Marlon has gone on to be with the Lord, but Mary's still with us. And she's actually still sometimes here. So we are grateful to her, and we're glad that she was such a key part of the growth of this show.
I would certainly say so. Phone calls are already coming here. And if you would like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. So we'll give you a chance to call in just a minute. I thought I'd give just a brief history and a very brief history of Point of View. Back in 1972, when Marlon started out, he would tape interviews, and it was in a closet. And if you ever saw this closet, one person would sit one way and one with the other, almost elbow to elbow, hip to hip, to do the interview.
So he would bring the guest into a closet.
Yeah, when he was first taping, and then he actually did shows live in a studio. But then his popularity grew almost instantaneously, and so there was a station in Houston that wanted to carry him. Well, this is long before we had satellite or anything like that. So what they would do is they would record the program on reel-to-reel. Now, for you young kids, this is like a big tape, okay? And then they would ship it down there. But they complained that because of that, he'd be talking about issues in the news that day, but they wouldn't air it for a few days, and so it was behind. So then it was interesting. They decided to connect up by telephone line. It sounded terrible, but at least
you got the information.
Yeah, and you got it live. Well, then you come up to 1982, and that's where then the satellite radio network said, well, wait a minute, you can put this up on satellite. So he got 2 hours on the satellite. But then there were some changes, and pretty soon they just said, here, you just have the whole transponder. And he says, yeah, well, I only need 2 hours. And he said, well, you got it for 24 hours. What am I going to do with the other 22 hours? And that was the growth of the USA Radio Network. And, of course, since then, we've seen some remarkable things happen. But we went from reel to reel, and you remember more than anybody actually working in the newsroom, having these carts. You know, these were things that would allow you to play various clips. Now everything's done digitally. But you can remember all the days in which we've seen the growth of technology. I remember one time when I brought in a laptop computer and showed Marlon how you could get on CompuServe, and this is the future. And he goes, really? And of course, now we have the internet. So we've gone through 43 years of major technological changes. But one thing that's been true is the dedication to tell the truth and to give a perspective that oftentimes people don't hear anywhere else.
Yes, it has. You know, speaking of technology, I mean, sometimes some of us are slow to adopt technology, but we see the vision of how useful it is. And I think that was Marlon. He has kids who are probably more techie than him, and you certainly are. So that would be explained to him. But Marlon was a visionary enough to say, we need to use this. So he took early advantage of, for instance, satellite technology. And the USA Radio Network and Point of View absolutely exploded. There was a time when we were on, what was our top number of stations? In the 600s, perhaps?
Probably.
I mean, because that was available for us, and
news,
people
yeah.
were hungry for the information, so it just spread throughout the country.
We already have some phone calls coming in, so I will take the time after the break to give you a chance to maybe share one of your stories about Marlon or about Point of View. That number is 1-800-351-1212. But when we come back, we're actually going to roll in after the break with a chance to hear how Marlon would bring you back from a break. That probably will tear one of us up, or maybe both of us. But nevertheless, I thought you'd enjoy that. And for those of you that are new to the program, and I recognize many of you say, you're talking about this guy I've never heard before. You'll have a chance to hear that voice and also some of the things that we said, because some of this was taken from an anniversary program done years and years ago. And so we thought we'd pull a little bit from that, but then also want to hear from individuals who say that this radio program made a profound difference in their life, caused them to go out and change their view of the world, caused some of them to go out and run for political office, caused others to think about whether or not they could have a career as a Christian lawyer. We're going to be hearing from some of them, but most importantly, we want to hear from you. So as we go to a break, take the time to give us a call. We won't keep you on long, and we won't put you on any kind of spot at all, but we'd love to hear how Point of View has impacted you. What kind of difference has it made? And if you'd like to share that with us and with the nation, we would greatly appreciate that. 1-800-351-1212. And, of course, we have more information about some of the issues we will be discussing today. Those are, of course, at the website pointofview.net. When we come back, instead of having me bring the program back, we're going to let Marlon Maddox bring the program back, just as he used to do day in and day out. We'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, for decades, crime rates have been declining or stagnant. Now there are more men dying in the streets than in previous years. The murder rates in major American cities like Milwaukee, St. Louis, Baltimore, and Washington are rising. The number of murders is outpacing the same period last year by quite a bit. So what is different? Well, progressives say that we have too many guns on the street. Inner city youth are settling their scores with guns, so that may be why we need stricter gun control. The problem with that explanation is the number of guns in these cities is about the same as it was last year, and there's no evidence that there has been a massive influx of new guns in these cities. And many of these cities are in states or the District of Columbia that already have strict gun control laws. But if you go back and look at that short list of cities I just mentioned, you might notice something. Many of them have been at the center of controversy about a police shooting, and all of them are at the center of the Black Lives Matter movement. In these cities, arrest rates are down while murder rates are up. Police in these cities are walking a careful line. Groups like Black Lives Matter condemn aggressive police actions, so police departments are facing major pushback from these activist groups and the mainstream media. And individual police officers think twice before they engage a suspect. You may have read about a Birmingham police officer that was beaten unconscious during a traffic stop. An angry 34-year-old convicted felon grabbed the detective's gun and pistol whipped him until he was unconscious. While recovering from his injuries in the hospital, the detective said that he hesitated to use force because of the post-Ferguson reaction to cops. He said, "I hesitated because I didn't want to be in the media like I am right now." I doubt that he is the only police officer that has hesitated. Arrests are down in these cities, and that seems like a more reasonable explanation for the rising murder rate. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Giving Films, 90 Minutes in Heaven, based on a true story, in theaters September 11th, rated PG-13. More information at 90minutesinheaventhemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're going to be talking about broadcasting. I began broadcasting in 1972. Started out as a 15-minute daily interview type program. Then it went to 1 hour. Then it went to 2 hours. And we broadcast for many years. Finally went on satellite in 1982. Kerby Anderson, let's reminisce here a little bit.
Happy anniversary, by the way.
Well, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You when were you first with? You were a guest first.
I was guest about 1980. Wasn't present at the beginning, but I got here as fast as I could. And I remember listening to you even before I was a guest on the show. And I remember at one radio station they said, we don't want to even have a talk show when Marlon Maddox is on because he's already starting to dominate the market. But I saw you when you were in a local talk show. I saw you when you went up on satellite. I saw you when you started the USA Radio Network and when you brought other co-hosts in. So I feel very privileged to have been a part of all of this. That was the voice from an anniversary show many, many years ago. That's the voice of Marlon Maddox. It's pretty powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wanted to answer a question that I asked you in the first segment. How many stations was the USA Radio Network on? 1,200.
1,200.
1,200 stations across the country. That's the voice of a man who I respected greatly, and he hired me here at Point of View. Of course, it was upon your recommendation, Kerby. Mm-hmm. But we were able to sort of pull together shows as a team. Marlon was the leader of the team, but he trusted his people. And so, we were able to carry on after his death.
We've always said, and we've said this before, but I thought we'd say it again, that you were brought in to be the kind of the woman's expert, but you found very quickly that the woman's issue, everything's a woman's issue. So
Right.
very quickly you were writing on a lot of things and doing interviews on almost any topic, and you brought so much to the table, and of course Marlon trusted you implicitly.
Yeah, well, just to quote a current presidential candidate, women are not a special interest group. In fact, we're in the majority in the country.
Yes.
And it's very true. I mean, a lot of the issues like the life issue, pro-life, for instance, that's a universal issue, the sanctity of a human life. Some people would have said that was a woman's issue, but it's, the babies in the womb are male and female.
Let's take a phone call, and if you'd like to join us along the way, 1-800-351-1212. We'll head out to Texas first. KJRT. Robin, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Well, thank you for having me. That was a blast from the past, listening to the voice of Marlon Maddox. I kind of miss him. I'm sure y'all do too. The reason I'm calling is because I remember something that happened years ago. I've been listening to y'all for years. And I called in one time. I'm not a politico whatsoever. I believe in voting, yes. But if it weren't for y'all and if it weren't for Marlon Maddox, I wouldn't know how to vote. I'm serious. I wouldn't know the first thing about voting, but I do now. But I just wanted to share a memory that I had. I had called in because y'all were talking about something political. And I called in and I said, this is what I said. I said, the monkeys and apes are running the asylum. And Marlon didn't laugh real often, but he chuckled, and that made my year. It really did make my year. For somebody like Marlon Maddox to laugh at something that you said, because okay, it was an opinion of mine, and I'm a type of person that tries to make people laugh anyway, trying to lighten the mood and stuff like that. But for a person like Marlon Maddox to laugh at something that you said, chuckle at something that you said, made my year. And I wanted to say that he is still blessing us from the grave.
Robin, let me ask you, if you thought the monkeys were running the asylum back then, what do you think now?
Oh, no, it's worse now. I know, I understand it's worse now, but we live in a free country. We live in a country that God has given us, and it's sad. It's sad to see what's going on in the United States. It's sad to see what's going on in the whole world, but we're supposed to be leaders, and we're supposed to be confronting evil. And our hands are being tied on a constant basis, but we still have to stand. The Bible says, when you have done all to stand, stand therefore. So we have to stand, no matter what. So that's the answer to your question.
Thank you, Robin. That's a good answer.
Well,
I wanted to share.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. Robin, thank you for starting us off today.
Okay, God bless you.
If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Marlon had a great sense of humor. And even
he had a great laugh, too.
Yeah, if you didn't hear him laugh on the air, it's only because some of the best jokes and some of the best lines were off air. And we used to say, can we say that on the probably not, but so that was certainly one aspect of that. She was talking about monkeys, and I might just mention, you can not only listen to the program, you can watch it. And I want to play a video, so you can actually watch the video right now, or you can listen to it. But this is a testimony of Jamie Jordan, and we caught it on video, so you can either watch it or listen to it. And here's what he had to say.
I started listening to Point of View in 1985. We moved from Little Rock, Arkansas to Conroe, Texas. Marlon Maddox was the host back then, and I remember that he used to call it the Head in the Sand Club, that his kind of mission in life was to pull people's heads out of the sand, and my head certainly was in the sand. And at the time, I was a theistic evolutionist, because I believed what they taught about Genesis, and as far as God created the world, but I also went to public school and believed what they taught about evolution. I didn't really understand the intellectual conflict, the politics, didn't really understand. I was always kind of conservative by nature, but didn't really understand what was going on. And today, the lies from the dominant media culture are just so rampant. And Point of View is such a breath of fresh air to have the truth told. And a little light in a dark space makes a lot of light. You can be in a black, dark cave, and one little candle will light up everything. I think Point of View, more than anything besides my parents, has influenced my worldview and my thinking. And to me, it's just really scary to think where I would be if it hadn't been for the influence of Point of View had on my life.
Incredible story. Jamie Jordan. And I wanted to play it for a couple of reasons. First of all, we were talking about monkeys a minute ago. He's talking about theistic evolution. Even tonight, I'm speaking on creation. And, of course, we oftentimes address those issues. But you remember the Head in the Sand Club? That one makes me laugh because Marlon was so good at coming up with these phrases. He used to have the da-da-da-da-da file, and he used to have this kind of visual file cabinet that would be a kind of theater of the mind. But another one was a Head in the Sand Club. And he was concerned then, I'm still concerned now, Penna, about a number of individuals that don't understand the power of their vote, the power of one individual to make a difference in the community.
Something I think is very different now than the situation that existed back then, and that is we sort of had still a Christian consensus, a Christian moral consensus in the country, even among people who wouldn't say that they were believers. And so that was Marlon's heart, and that was the role of Point of View, to pull people's head out of the sand, to educate them, to help motivate them to just vote or make a difference in some way, perhaps a lobby or member of Congress on a certain issue. So we're just turning out information about all the issues that faced us. And I think this did make a big impact, and it helped Christians. The difference today is we don't have that Christian moral consensus. Yes, we might have a majority of people that are Christians, but in the big institutions in the culture do not have that Christian worldview. It's just not even remotely part of it. And so we have a different job to do. We're needed more now than we even were then. But the role that Point of View played in helping people just their lights come on and them to understand what was happening to the country, I think was a huge role.
One of the things that motivated Marlon was because he recognized that there was sort of this secular, liberal, humanistic filibuster going on. Those of us that are a little bit older, those of us that have gray hair or no hair at all, can remember a time when, if this was said on ABC, NBC, or CBS, that was it. If Walter Cronkite said it, that was it. That was truth. And there was no other perspective out there. And Marlon really developed the program in large part to do an end run and provide an alternative. It was the first Christian program on satellite. By the way, it was the first Christian program to actually be streaming. We've always used the technology, but there is a difference. As you said, back then you could still kind of pull upon a Christian consensus, and there was a real desire to give an alternative. Now we don't have that Christian consensus, and there's something else. Now there's lots of voices, and a lot of people want to know, well, who do I trust? I mean, I can go to all sorts of blog posts. I can hear all sorts of people making statements, but this has moved from just providing information that no one else covers, which we still do, but also trying to give you news and information that you can really trust.
Yes, and we are so grateful for the proliferation of outlets and for all the conservative talk that's out there. We try to come in with, one more piece, and that is the biblical worldview, and to always bring you back to what God's word said and to what God says about things. And it really gives a lot more authority to the conservative position on most issues.
I would certainly agree. We need to take a break again. When we come back, we'll have one more roll in, at least, from Marlon Maddox. In this case, he brings us back to the program, but then also gives you a chance to know, how did we come up with this idea of a weekend edition? Where did that come from? So he's going to give you a little of the history, and I can tell you the story, but let's let Marlon Maddox tell you the story. And so you get a chance when we come back from the break to hear that. We have many other people to hear from as well, but also the lines are filling up. We most importantly want to hear from you. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Point of View needs your prayers right now and your help. We are counting down the hours on our September Matching Challenge, a $50,000 gift from a ministry friend who has promised to double your own generous donation. But here's the rub. If you don't give, there's nothing to match. Please, whether it's $20 or $2,000, we need to hear from you before the 30th is over. A few more days. Call now. Give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
And learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room, Now play. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View with Marlon Maddox. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Marlon Maddox.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You know, sometimes things happen. You don't really sit down and plan them. And reminiscing back over the history of Point of View Radio Talk Show, there's so many small things that seemed to be small at the time, but small decisions if they had not been made and if certain things had not happened, the program really would not have survived. Kind of makes you think maybe God might have had a hand in it, doesn't it?
That's right.
I mean, that's the whole key.
And again, that was one of the things that he said just before he explained how we ended up with Weekend Edition. And so rather than play, do we have that piece? We can actually, no, I thought I will explain it. But it's really interesting because what happened is that Tim LaHaye, you know Tim LaHaye, I've known him for many years, would come in and actually do a broadcast out of Prestonwood Baptist Church. They had a television program at that time that was actually airing from there. And Marlon convinced him to come in on Friday, a day early, and then to come in and be on the program. Well, once that happened, he began to say, well, that would be a great roundtable, and somebody else he called in was me. So I had a chance to sit with Marlon Maddox and Tim LaHaye, as we did
Friday.
Every single Friday.
Wow.
And it eventually morphed into what we today call Weekend Edition. At that time, it was called Weekend Weekend Review. Weekend Review. I knew that. And that was the case. And so that changed. Well, then very quickly thereafter, we had John Clemens, we had Penna Dexter. And of course, these days now, we oftentimes have Kelly Shackelford and Penna Dexter. And so that all developed out of simply a decision to bring Tim LaHaye on Fridays. And of course, now one of the more popular programs we do, perhaps the most popular program we do every week, is on Friday, because it not only airs in a lot of stations on Friday, many other stations carry it over the weekend. And so it gives you a lot of different exposure. So kind of interesting and incredible, again, to hear Marlon's voice, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's fun to think about the evolution of the Weekend Edition. We called it Weekend Review. We tried to review the issues of the week. And then when we realized it was being broadcast and rebroadcast throughout the weekend, we switched the name. It made it more appropriate. But it has always been really the most popular show of the week.
Again,
and I love doing it.
I love having you here. And we love to have Kelly here. And when you can't be here, we'll bring in all sorts of other individuals. Matter of fact, one of the people we'll hear from a little bit later is Jeremy Dice, one of the people we've brought in here, and Debbie Georgiadis, and on and on and on. But I want to hear from you. That's the most important thing. So let's go back to the phones, and we'll head out to North Carolina first, WLGP. Doris, what would you like to share?
Hi. I didn't know I was going to get emotional when I first called. I became a Christian back in 1977, was living way out in the country, away from, had been raised in a liberal-minded home, and didn't even know I had any point of view, really. And without knowing it, I was listening to Marlon Maddox back then. And between him and Chuck Colson, I think they taught me a biblical point of view and to get involved and to I just appreciate all you guys do. I mean, I learned so much, and it's amazing what you teach that I say to other people, and they look at me like, where did you hear that? So I appreciate you guys, and I like to tell people I'm an optimistic realist because I know all the details, and it scares me to death, but I have a good God, and He's in control. So thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you. And again, it is easy to get emotional here, isn't it, when we start talking about some of this as well. Doris, we appreciate you calling and been a Christian since 1977. So thanks for sharing that story with us today.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Let's, if we can, take a few more phone calls real quickly, and we'll head out to Missouri this time. Mike, what would you like to share?
Oh, just... I never really listened to him too much. It was my mother. Now I didn't even listen to Point of View. So,
But your mother listened?
Oh my gosh, yeah, she lived to 93.
So were you in the backyard, in the back seat?
She would share with me all the stuff, and I said, "Where'd you hear that on the radio?" Oh yeah. Matt, and so she always talked people that she liked. She always talked to them like they were best friends. So who knows with her? She may have. I know she contributed and she did things like that. But anyway, it's maybe even though they're all gone, they're still contributing. As a pastor once told me, he said, all prayers are answered. They may not be answered in your lifetime, but they will be answered.
Wow.
So I thought, Yeah, when I heard that name, I was listening to. Now I listen.
So, did the message of the conservative, biblical kind of point of view on politics and current events, did that begin to take with you at some point?
Mm-hmm. I've always been pretty staunch in my beliefs. Did I always practice everything that I had been brought up and taught? Because I was raised in a very strict Christian background, so I rebelled for a while. So, mm-hmm.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that story, and if nothing else,
anyway, but
we see a generational impact.
Yeah, there's still a lot of their prayers, Mr. Maddox, my mother. They're going to be answered. Just wasn't in their time. But my mother always said, like Maddox said, you better have your tennis shoes ready to take off because things are going to change really fast, and you better be ready.
She was right, wasn't she? Again, I think we just kind of see that generational impact. And I thought just before we take another phone call, I mentioned Jeremy Dice. He's been in the studio with us before, but there's a good example of an individual that actually was oftentimes listening to Point of View, not because he tuned it into his radio, but because his parents were listening to it, and he had a chance to listen in. So let's hear what Jeremy Dice has to say.
I listened to Point of View when I was probably in the 3rd and 4th grade, and that's really where I started hearing how to begin to integrate what you believed with what was going on in the world today. Point of View certainly allowed me to see the world around me in a different way than I would have seen it otherwise. And so I was much more aware of the things that are going on, much more aware of the dangers that people of faith will face in the world around them, and the dangers that come with the loss of our religious liberty. And so it certainly made me think about how do you defend your faith in public and what's the best means of doing that. And for me, outworking of that was just to go right into law school and to be able to defend the faith and defend people of faith in their day-to-day lives. For Point of View to have influenced my life at an early stage of my life, to be able to begin helping me think through important issues of the day so that we would be able to apply what we believe to what we do, that is carried with me to this day.
Incredible. Jeremy Dice has been with us, and again, he went to law school, and now he's with Liberty Institute. And Penna, this is one that always kind of hits me because I said, I started listening to Point of View when I was in the 3rd grade. I thought, boy, first of all, it made me feel old. But the other day, I'm reading the Dallas Morning News, the story, and all of a sudden at the very end, and they quote from Jeremy Dice, Liberty Institute. And I'm thinking, here, the kind of national prominence he has. Of course, you can see him on Fox News and other things. And that goes all the way back to listening to Marlon, because his parents were listening to Marlon Maddox, and it really got him thinking quite a bit about whether or not that might be a career he'd like to pursue.
I think that is the beauty of talk radio, is that you have a period of time. It's not just a soundbite, and you come into people's lives and you are part of their lives. And, Marlon was, and we try to be that too. We're reliable. We come to the listener every single day for 2 hours. And so they can not only build that relationship, but also build that understanding. Block by block, you begin to understand these principles. That's what happened to him as a child, and it can continue throughout life and encourage people to even seek more information. So, he's not the only story. He's one, a very exciting one, and I'm so happy he gets to come and do the program with us sometimes. But there are many others.
Well, and we want to hear those. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take some more phone calls in just a minute, but we have one of those breaks. But again, back to that point of block of information, there are a lot of people that live in the soundbite culture, and nothing wrong with sound bites, because sometimes you can encapsulate a really important, profound truth in just a few words. But we have the chance to really develop a presentation, and so often we get some author on here who tries to deliver all of the things he or she has to say in the first segment because they don't really understand that actually you have an entire hour to begin to address some of those issues. And so I think that's one of those things that is really important. And so again, that block of information, we really try to get deep so that you really understand the issue, and then day after day, year after year, you really develop a worldview, just as we were talking about with Doris a few minutes ago.
Yeah, the information builds on itself. I mean, we now recognize the short attention span of certain people. We try to produce parts of our program and also our own commentaries that fit into that. But there's nothing that replaces this discussion, this sort of town hall meeting that happens on Point of View, and we plan on continuing to do that.
Well, let's take a break. We'll come back, and Penna Dexter with me. Of course, if you would like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take some more of those phone calls right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back once again, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter with me, and we are talking about the 43rd anniversary of Point of View. Started in September 1972. Pretty amazing. And if you would like to join us, we'd love to hear from you. Perhaps you have stories of the past. And, of course, some of you remember when Marlon was the host. Of course, now you've been listening for many years where we have been taking on the mantle and trying to continue to do all the things that are necessary to educate and equip and empower you. So if you'd like to join us, we would love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. Let's go to Georgia. David, I know you want to share something, so we want to hear from you.
Yes, sir. How you doing, Mr. Kerby Anderson?
I'm doing great.
Good. You and Penn, I hope y'all doing well. What I want to share is back around 89 when I first turned 88.3, I heard Marlon speaking then, and really what helped me was I wasn't an advocate to vote very much at all back then, but now I vote religiously every time there's a voting cycle.
Good.
So that really prompted me to get my head out the sand and start voting, and then I found out just how very important that is. In the last election, I understand if all the Christians that have come out and voted, could have very well had a different turnout. So that's what I want to share with you all, and I appreciate what you and Penna both do. Y'all been a blessing to me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for remembering all of that. And the vote is really important, Penna, and that's one thing we've talked about. We've had voter guides. We've connected people up to all sorts of individuals that have analyzed candidates, from the Phyllis Schlaflys to even the Kelly Shacklefords, when he used to do more of that before he developed Liberty Institute. And so we, once again, are really dedicated to trying to do all we can to educate people about the importance of voting.
Number one, it's important to vote. Number two, it's important to cast an informed vote. And that's where I think we've helped people over the years and continue to try to do that.
Let's, if we can, since we're talking about voting, we'll go to Jacob real quickly. Jacob, what would you like to add to the conversation?
I really do thank you all for what you are doing in order to enlighten the world, and especially Christians. And one thing I was, during the last election, I'm out in the streets. I'm a minister in the hedges and the byways. And there's a lot of isms and schisms being taught inside of churches and through older individuals that voting is not important. And the last election between Obama and the Mormon, millions of people, Christians, would not vote. And that's what I wanted to get you all to speak to, that Christian that could not differentiate between Obama and the Mormon. How would you advise us to vote who are on the fence?
Sure.
I think when you vote, and that's what we have tried to do, lay out the issues, to let people understand what the issues are that face the country, how they will affect the economy, how they will affect the family, how they will affect foreign policy. When you vote, you're never going to get a candidate or a president who is perfectly in line with your values. You'll never get that. Kirby, you have a great answer for that, and I'll let you give it. But you vote on what you think this person will do as president. You cannot just have a test that's narrow like that. I mean, the fact that Mitt Romney was a Mormon, it wasn't all that exciting to many of us who were believers, but we placed the candidates side by side. We said, what is your view on this issue? What's your view on the next issue? What's your view on the sanctity of life? What's your view on marriage? What's your view on our economy, taxation, the size of government? You make that comparison, and whoever lines up the best with the values you think are important, that's who you vote for. That's how I think people should vote. And we try here to give you the information that allows you to line up candidates that way. So that's what Point of View is about.
Well, and I certainly agree with that. And you've heard me say jokingly, the only time I voted for a candidate that I completely agreed with was when I voted for myself 2 different times when I ran for office. These are just precinct chairman elections, but nevertheless, that's the point. We honestly recognize that sometimes there's a tendency, Penna, as you well know, in churches for the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And that is to say that there is really neither candidate can I vote for when you recognize the profound direction in which the country has gone just in the last 3 years since that re-election of this president. And to say that that wouldn't have made any difference is really to ignore all sorts of obvious things that would take place. So as I've said before, if you don't like who you vote for in the general election, maybe that means you need to get involved in the primaries, right? And so we're not just talking about a presidential primary right now, although that's most of the focus. But if you are concerned about your United States senator, your member of Congress, your mayor, your city council, whatever it might be, maybe God was calling you to run for office or to get behind somebody who needs to run for office, and encourage those individuals that you disagree with passionately to go find another job and put somebody in that's much better. And in every circumstance, there's going to be something that you may disagree with on a candidate, but that should not keep you from voting. And so I hope that we've educated people about that. And again, if there's a legacy about Point of View, for many years, and especially more recently, we've tried to put either voter guides on the website, pointofview.net, or at least links to all of those others, so that you can find Eagle Forum, Concerned Women for America, American Family Association, anything that's available through the Family Research Council, and on and on and on, so that you know who some of these candidates are. And we spent a fair amount of money a couple of years ago in a couple of states in actually using individuals who were on the ground to evaluate everybody from president down to, as I jokingly said, dog catcher, so that you really even knew where some of the state legislators stood on those issues. And so it's something that is important. But again, we will try to get you that information, but make wise decisions. And if we can encourage us to think about how important your vote is, we're going to be doing a program very soon here. George Barn is going to be joining us, and Gary Frazier, and they're going to be giving you the numbers on the number of born-again evangelical Christians who right now are not registered to vote, and then the number that are registered to vote that did not vote last time. And if you could even begin to mobilize your friends, neighbors, coworkers, maybe even family members to first be registered to vote and vote intelligently, that will change the next election dramatically, don't you think?
Yeah, and to that message that was mentioned by Jacob, that Christians aren't to vote, or Christians should not get involved or even pay attention to politics. I mean, that is basically, I think, falling down on the job. We have a stewardship as Christians to seek the good of the city or the place where we live. And in this country, we actually have a better opportunity because of our form of government. So we must be involved, and we're here to help you do that.
Well, again, the excuses I've heard over the years why people don't vote, well, I'll be called for jury duty. Well, that's a false excuse, because they'll still call you even if you aren't registered to vote. So that one doesn't work very well. Or I don't agree with any of the candidates. Well, that can't be the case. I mean, lots of times when people say, well, I don't agree with either candidates, like, well, I agree with this one 80% of the time and another one 40% of the time. Well, I think God's
There's
calling
your
you.
answer.
Yeah, there's your obvious answer here. And back to your point, I think God will hold us responsible. We have a stewardship responsibility, certainly, in that regard. Well, we have an opportunity here to give you a chance to join with us, and we would really love to know how Point of View has impacted your life. What kind of impact has it made? And we'll have a chance in the second hour here to hear a little bit more from some others that have called in previously, as well as some that are actually prominent individuals who are very profoundly influenced by Point of View. So if you would like to join with that, we would love to hear from you. We've had a chance to hear from 5 of you, but there's room for many others as some other calls are coming in. So if you would like to join the conversation, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. And as we take a break, that will be a great opportunity for you to join in and to share what Point of View has meant to you. And we'd love to hear that. I know others would be encouraged by that. And we, again, encourage you to visit the website, pointofview.net, and find out a little bit more. Penna Dexter with me. We'll take a break. We'll come back with our second hour and your calls right after this.
It is riddle time. What is often misunderstood and ticks down faster than a Texas student's homemade clock? A Point of View matching challenge. All right, that was a really bad way to get your attention. There are so many issues today where wisdom is needed. You need as many allies as you can get in a time like this. And I believe the nation needs Point of View. We have a friend who thinks so too. So much so, this friend has put their money where their worldview is and is challenging you to do the same thing. For every gift you give, this friend will double it, an equal amount up to $50,000. Whether you feel like your means are great or small, just do what you can and know it will be doubled. Bottom line, we need you to dig down. We have just a few days left in this challenge. Double your impact when you give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Thank you.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Penna Dexter with me, and it's our anniversary show. We thought that this would be an opportunity for you to share a little bit about what a Point of View has meant to you. And Penna, one of the things I found is that even in the early days when I would go out and speak, people would tell me stories, but it's easy to be in a studio just talking and forget the impact. And yet, as I've said before, it's a little bit like the story of the 10 lepers that Jesus heals. Only one comes back, the 9 keep going. And I'm not saying that people are trying to ignore what God has done in their lives, but they don't have a mechanism to do so. And as you and I have traveled over the years and been to various conferences, there are all sorts of people come up and say, "You're with Point of View? Oh, I cannot tell you the impact that this has had in my life."
Well, here's what they do. First of all, they come up to you and they want to have their effort, whatever ministry they have or whatever they're involved in, they want you to publicize it on Point of View. And that's one great, I think, really a reason Point of View exists, to help people that are doing wonderful things for the culture get a forum to broadcast, to understand, to help people understand what they're doing. So, over the years, when I go to different conservative events, people are always coming up to me, either wanting to be on or saying thank you for what we've done to put their ministry on the map. And then, of course, there's just the everyday listener, the people that we come across, Kerby, you and I, in our daily walk of life, who listens, who's began to understand an issue, who's become involved in something, even has become more involved in their own child's life because of Point of View. So those are all the things. And if you've got a testimony like that, we'd love to hear from you.
We certainly would. So again, give us a call, 1-800-351-1212. The callers today are key, and certainly want to hear each one of your stories, and we give you a platform to do so. So let's go to New Mexico. Mordecai, what would you like to share with everyone?
Yes, thank you for, first of all, what you do, and you guys just seem too humble to be true. But anyway, I'm from Fruitland, New Mexico area, and I just wanted to say that your program reminds me of what later on I listened to, like Rush Limbaugh, and people would always say that Rush gave conservatives a voice, and stuff like that. But you guys did that even before Rush, so that's amazing. You've given us a voice, and I want to thank you for that. And I also think you've helped a lot of churches and for believers to get maybe where they were lacking in education about the world situation in their churches. So that's kind of my comment, and just God bless you all.
Well, that is a great comment. And again, we recognize that you need to support your local church, and we certainly appreciate the pastors that are bold in speaking to these issues. But oftentimes, some of the very important topics we address here on Point of View are not something you're going to hear in a sermon or a Sunday school class. And so this is part of your political and Christian education. And we talk about how to articulate a biblical worldview, how to defend a biblical worldview. So that's worldview and apologetics. We talk about the issues of the day and try to apply a biblical perspective. So let's hear from a few more of you, 1-800-351-1212. But Penna, as over the years, we've had all sorts of people say that they are really interested in trying to take some of the things they've learned on Point of View and bring them back to their church. And just yesterday, I had somebody grab my shoulder and say, we're thinking about maybe doing some kind of Christian action group. And I said, oh, well, and I started telling the story about We used to have an action lunch and Christian action committee and things like that, because they want to take the ideas that they hear on Point of View and educate everybody in their congregation about those.
Yeah, you've really got an audience there that has sort of half of the battle has been fought because they already are believers. And so if you just begin to present these issues to people, they're often going to vote right, and a lot of times they'll get involved. So that's the kind of stories we'd love to hear about from folks who are listening.
Let's take some more phone calls. We'll head up to Alaska this time. KJNP. Gwen, thank you for calling today.
Hi. I feel like I'm a child calling home to the family.
Oh.
You have been so important in my life. I started listening, I think, back in 2000. No, it's probably about 1995 or so. There's a Clinton scandal going on, and I was listening to the radio, and I thought, I thought this was NPR, but it doesn't sound like NPR. And I realized that was the first time I ever heard you, and I kept listening, and I became very involved in what you were saying, and I just want to read something from my diary. I'm writing this on April 2nd, 2004, and can't remember everything that happened, but such a sadness came over me about 8:45 a.m. this morning. I had just finished praying with my husband, Steve, and said goodbye, and the sadness progressed with such confusion, and I sought God as to why I was so down, what had I done. I'm just going to share, this confusion and the sadness and the crying went on, and I homeschool my children, and they could not understand, why is Mom crying? My husband came home, we had dinner, I went out and was shopping for the family and went to say hi to our son who was attending college in town, and I was listening, because the only way I could hear your program was to tape it. And I didn't, 3-hour time difference was too much of a time for me to, right in the middle of my day, I would always tape it and listen later as I went for a walk or in the car. And as I pulled up to my son's dormitory, you were talking Kerby and shared that Marlon had passed away March 4th. And all of a sudden, I just was bawling. And I realized why I was crying so much. I had no idea. But when I realized that Marlon had passed away at 11:45, the exact time that the sadness came over me. And so you have been so important to me. And you shared earlier, Penna, that a lot of people may not even know the husbands or wives, or I guess Kerby shared that. But yes, I do. I pray for Todd and Penna, Kerby and Susan, Mary, and Warren Kelly, who I believe is the son-in-law of Marlon and Mary. And for Kelly and Karen Shackelford, I know they're not on Point of View, but they mean so much. And you guys need prayer because you are right there on the forefront, and Satan wants to destroy the truth, but you're on the battlefront. You need the prayer. And I thank God that he makes it possible for me to hear your program on the side of a mountain where we don't hear a lot of programs don't come in, but thankfully there's a transfer station in Houston, Alaska, not Houston, Texas. It's a very small little place that allows it to come to our house. And I praise God for you all. You've been such a blessing to me.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Gwen. That means the world to us to know that you're praying for us.
Incredible. Well, good time to go to a break because I'm not sure I can keep it together. So let's, if we can, take a break real quickly. And Gwen, thank you for sharing that. And we are so glad that we had a chance to hear from you. And for those of you that would like to share something, we still have an open line for you, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take some more phone calls right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, for decades, crime rates have been declining or stagnant. Now there are more men dying in the streets than in previous years. The murder rates in major American cities like Milwaukee, St. Louis, Baltimore, and Washington are rising. The number of murders is outpacing the same period last year by quite a bit. So what is different? Well, progressives say that we have too many guns on the street. Inner city youth are settling their scores with guns, so that may be why we need stricter gun control. The problem with that explanation is the number of guns in these cities is about the same as it was last year, and there's no evidence that there has been a massive influx of new guns in these cities. And many of these cities are in states or the District of Columbia that already have strict gun control laws. But if you go back and look at that short list of cities I just mentioned, you might notice something. Many of them have been at the center of controversy about a police shooting, and all of them are at the center of the Black Lives Matter movement. In these cities, arrest rates are down while murder rates are up. Police in these cities are walking a careful line. Groups like Black Lives Matter condemn aggressive police actions, so police departments are facing major pushback from these activist groups and the mainstream media. And individual police officers think twice before they engage a suspect. You may have read about a Birmingham police officer that was beaten unconscious during a traffic stop. An angry 34-year-old convicted felon grabbed the detective's gun and pistol whipped him until he was unconscious. While recovering from his injuries in the hospital, the detective said that he hesitated to use force because of the post-Ferguson reaction to cops. He said, "I hesitated because I didn't want to be in the media like I am right now." I doubt that he is the only police officer that has hesitated. Arrests are down in these cities, and that seems like a more reasonable explanation for the rising murder rate. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Giving Films, 90 Minutes in Heaven, based on a true story, in theaters September 11th, rated PG-13. More information at 90minutesinheaventhemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
But you know, in all of these years, we've talked about some very, very important issues, I should say. Let me throw it out to you today. What issue that perhaps you've heard discussed on Point of View has made an impact on your life? Perhaps got you involved in doing some things. Maybe, there are people that tell me because of listening to Point of View, hearing the information, hearing the guests and the discussions, my life has been changed this way, or this issue made an impact on my life. Give us a ring, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212.
And that's from a number of years ago, but we still have the same number. Had the number since the very beginning. I remember one time we were in a conference and Marlon said, okay, let's all say it in unison. 1-800-351-1212. Everybody knew the call. So he was asking for phone calls many, many years ago, and we are asking for those now. And if you'd like to join us, that is the number, 1-800-351-1212. Let's head out to Missouri. Jerry, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, I'm an over-the-road truck driver, and I appreciate you taking my call. And I've been out here for a long time, and a lot of the information I get from the show really helps me out because I deal with a lot of younger guys out here, no families. They're real easily led into the wrong things because every truck stop has a pornographic store nearby.
Yes.
Liquor stores nearby, and these guys are pretty lost or alone, and it helps me to kind of give them some information to kind of keep them on the right path. Because it's so easy to be led astray out here, especially when you're out here sometimes weeks at a time. It's hard on the young guys.
Yep. Well, and I've driven up and down the roads in Missouri many a time. I speak at Kennecott and all sorts of other things in Branson, and I'm well aware of the routes you probably are taking and the need that is out there. So thank you for taking the information that we are giving to you. We're trying to educate you, equip you, empower you, and help you be an effective minister. And it sounds like you've been doing that for many years. So thank you for your faithfulness.
Well, I certainly do try. I mean, that's like I'm getting ready to come off the road and start studying to be a pastor, so I try to, every chance I get to try to keep these kids on the right path.
Good for you. Well, thanks for calling in, and be safe down the road. Let's take another phone call real quickly. We'll go to Georgia this time. Jimmy, what would you like to add to the conversation today?
My wife just made a $43 contribution to y'all.
Oh, how about that?
Thank you. Challenge anybody that's listening to do the same thing.
Well, that's a pretty good idea. 43 years. Again, for those of you that just joined us, Point of View started September in 1972. So that's 43 years. And that's a great idea. I'd never thought about that. I'm not doing this as a fundraiser, but 43, a donation of $43.
Hey, money.
Yes, well,
very creative. Thank you.
That is so creative. Jimmy, thank you for that suggestion. When we talk about this, I guess we have to go back a little bit. I first was on with Marlon in 1980. And so if you do the math, I guess that makes it, 36 years. And then one day he called me after I had asked him to teach in my class at Dallas Seminary. At that time, I was teaching a class at Dallas Seminary on media. And he called up like the day before he was supposed to speak. So I was sure he was calling to cancel because that had happened to me before. He said, no, I'll be on your program and I'll be able to really speak to the pastors that you have and other individuals, but I want to do a trade. Would you like to come on my program? And I'd done a little bit with Moody Broadcasting and some other things. So I said, okay. So that was in 1986. So
wow.
That's 29 years. So I know we have listeners that are younger than that, and I don't feel that old, but nevertheless, that shows some of the legacy here. And again, 43 years and donation of $43. Never would have thought
nice.
of that.
Marlon asked in that clip that we played at the beginning, what was the issue that that spoke to you from Point of View? And for me, because as you mentioned earlier in the show, I was a listener before I was on the show. And it was the issue of education that spoke to me. Marlon was very interested in that issue.
Yes.
And he learned how badly the public education system was beginning to be controlled by the left. And he broadcast that. He also called to action when there was something to be voted on. And I got so much information from Marlon as I was raising my young children. It was very helpful to me. So that's my testimony as a listener, a Point of View.
Well, you also with Concerned Women for America, and I remember getting to know you, and you would go to these conferences. You had all this information, but you didn't have a way to disseminate it. And so I suggested Marlon would be really smart if he brought Penna Dexter on. And, of course, you just brought a wealth of experience and information. We didn't have to explain who these individuals were because you and your husband had met them. You knew who some of the people were. You knew who some of the issues were. And we've just been blessed over the years to really have you around. And do we have that clip where Marlon talks about some of the other people around the round table? I thought that might be good. So if we can, Andrew, let's go to that right now.
We've had some top-notch people working with us over the years. John Clemens, who was with us for about 12 years. I call him the world's greatest newsman. And then our first lady co-host was Lindsay O'Connor. And she's been a guest on the program a few times since then. And then Penna Dexter came, and I got to face it, boys, she brought some class to this program. And I think one of the... probably one of the most rewarding things when you go out in the public to speak or at a meeting or something, the sincere appreciation from the listeners. Not just they enjoy the program, but so many of them, their lives have absolutely been totally changed. The direction of their life has been changed as a result of the guests, the information, and the things that we have told them over the years.
Well, I had to play that just because you brought class. There's no doubt about that to Point of View.
He was such a gentleman. Marlon was always so encouraging and complimentary. And, it helped to have a boss like that. And it was like a team effort, really it was, and we supported one another. And I always tried to kind of lay out some issues and different little spots that I would produce to kind of move the program along. We sort of worked that way then, and it was really fun. It was great.
Not only a gentleman, but I don't think I ever saw him in anything other than a suit.
No.
And we were just looking through this old notebook in the old days. Even the first times I was there, I always had a tie on. So lots of times had a suit on because he was always just very, very well dressed.
We did not have the webcam then, but we could have because he was always dressed for the occasion.
Let's take another phone call or two. Head out to North Carolina this time. Harvey, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I would love to hear your story. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting to me. I was listening to PowerPoint for over the years before I got involved into the ministry. And when I was an ex-gang member in Baltimore, Maryland, I grew up in the projects majority of my life, and I was just seeing a 9-year-old girl got killed in front of me, and I started really getting out of the gang population, and then started having a lot of Christian people start leading me the right way. And then as I started listening to the point of view, it started giving me an emphasis on listening to the youth one year when I was listening to the broadcast. I can't remember the person who it was. But I've been going out in the public in the district, talking with a lot of the kids that's in the group home, the gang violence, the gun shootings into the schools, and where are the role models that start talking more about these kids and leading these kids away from the gang population. So I had an emphasis of joining the church, getting myself together, getting saved, working with the kids in the church. And now here I am now talking with a lot of the youth and stuff, bringing the kids out of the group home. And I wound up working in group homes, dealing with kids that were involved in ex-gang members like I was. And I started talking to a lot of these kids about Jesus Christ. And a lot of these kids started going to church with me. And then first thing I noticed, they got saved and they got out of the gang population. And then here I am now, is looking for sponsors of anybody that's listening to this broadcast on North Carolina. I hope and pray that the mothers, the fathers, and all of this, they start teaching their kids to be more and more the system of the world today in order to bring these kids out of the gang population. Because what's going on now, we just don't have enough role models to talk with these kids, and these kids stray away and join gangs because the gangs come their family. And then these kids need to love, but the only person that I can see love these kids is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And that's what we need. And I just don't have the resources and a sponsor to help me, to take me around the majority of the schools and stuff, to have me to speak with these kids. And so one day I got down on my knees and I asked God that one day I want to get on point of view, to have somebody to talk with me. And maybe whoever out there listening to me, I'm looking for a sponsor. I'm looking for somebody to help me. Or try
Sure.
to
We're coming to a break, so let me
me.
just mention real quickly that maybe you could connect your local station there in North Carolina. So if somebody wants to connect up with you, they'd be able to do so. And they can use that local radio station there in North Carolina to develop that. Thank you for that testimony. I do need to take one of those mandatory breaks. We'll come back and take all sorts of phone calls right after these important messages.
Point of View needs your prayers right now and your help. We are counting down the hours on our September Matching Challenge, a $50,000 gift from a ministry friend who has promised to double your own generous donation. But here's the rub. If you don't give, there's nothing to match. Please, whether it's $20 or $2,000, we need to hear from you before the 30th is over. A few more days. Call now. Give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
and learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room. Now play. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter with us today, and we're talking about the 43rd anniversary of Point of View. We've had one individual, Jimmy, suggesting sending in a gift of $43. And by the way, if you do that, it's matched, because in September we have that match fund. So actually, 43 becomes 86, if my math is correct, or whatever you want to give. He was just suggesting that, and that wasn't the purpose of this, but I thought it was very unique. And once again, just a reminder that you can help us to keep on the air, and your financial gifts right now are doubled in September because we have a very generous donor that is willing to do that. So let's, if we can, go back to the phones. We'll head to Georgia first, WLPE. Pamela, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good afternoon. Well, I've got to talk fast because I've got so many things I appreciate you for. One is, like when we're going to hear about the debates, and I hear all these people talking about debates, and I say, wait a minute, I'm going to listen, and Point of View will talk about it, and then I'll know the truth about the debates. So then I'm able to speak more wisely, and I appreciate the action items that you put on so that we know where and how to do those action items, because I don't always know exactly how to go about it, but you've got it well posted. I appreciate the commentaries each of you write on your website. I appreciate things that you put on the website that we can repost onto our Facebook. I appreciate Friday when you're all around the round table and we get to hear a whole lot of you. You know, what we're doing about religious persecution or whatever's going on Fridays. I like to hear all of you talking at once. I like the different authors that you put on so that I can hear, I like knowing why they wrote it, how they wrote it, their backstory sort of. And so it's books that I would never even know about. I had them on. I appreciate the apologetics program so that I know how to defend my faith. And I appreciate that I met Kerby in Augusta, Georgia, and I appreciate that you come out and meet your listeners. So I think that's about 8 or 10 things.
That's a comprehensive list.
That's a good list, and it was fun to be in Georgia. Again, that was due to our good friends at Good News Network. We need to do that again, and certainly try to meet people all over the country, but those opportunities, whether it's been in Georgia, California, Ohio, wherever it might be, just a great opportunity to meet the individuals that listen to the program every single day.
Yeah.
Pamela, thank you for articulating.
All of these plus more.
Well, that is wonderful. That's the most complete list. So you get the prize
put
today.
it all together.
Pamela, I look forward to meeting you again when I get back to Augusta, Georgia. So make sure you come out and say hi when we do that, because we will do that again, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity as well. That's a good list. I don't know if anybody can top that, but we're going to give a few more of you a chance. And Diana, KAVX in Texas, I believe, didn't you homeschool your family?
Yes, well, I'm a long-time listener, and I think it was back in the 80s when Marlon had Raymond Moore as a guest, and my father had taught me to read before I went to school, so I had that in mind, but I had never thought of teaching my own children all of school. So my husband and I committed to that, and we homeschooled our children and went on to be leaders in homeschooling community and so forth. But the influence didn't end there. My husband and I were already voters in elections and so forth, but I hadn't really helped campaign for anyone. So Marlon helped inspire that. And there was a Board of Education candidate, Donna Ballard, and I went door to door, pushing the stroller, having a little one, and I think I was also pregnant at the time. And so we made a real impression going door to door. And my kids called it Donna Ballarding.
Cute.
But they have all become informed voters also now. They're adults. And so that was a big impact. But I have to comment that before there was the video streaming and everything, sometimes there'd be clips from movies that Marlon would play. But I think my favorite show was when he went outside and burned the UN flag.
I was thinking about that the other day. He and John Clemens did that. Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And it was just I'm not usually someone in for demonstration, but I was just about ready to go out and burn a UN flag myself. But just over the years, all the information has been wonderful. And Kerby, I so appreciate you stepping in. I know you felt like you were filling really big shoes for Marlon.
Very true.
But I've appreciated you and Penna, and I must admit that Fridays are probably my favorite programs. So when all cylinders are going there. But appreciate y'all so much, and I'm looking forward to making a donation to help keep y'all running. Y'all have made a big impact in our family, and appreciate and enjoy y'all.
Yeah, Penna, you were homeschooled, and I know that was an encouragement to you as well.
Well, the show was an encouragement for homeschooling, and I think it was an education for Marlon to see the importance and the need for homeschooling in our country and in many families. He was a skeptic of it when he started, but he started having guests on and asked, people that were advocating homeschooling and talking about what was wrong with the public schools. And he did a 180 on it and provided so many great guests and so much encouragement. And so Diana's testimony is one of, really his impact on her decisions and things. And so that was great. It was fun to watch Marlon get wind of something and then just jump into it and dig in. Yes. And then the whole, all the listening audience could dig in with him.
Yes. Diana, thank you for calling, and hope you'll do that again.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Let's see if we can move on to another caller in Kentucky this time. Rhonda, thank you for calling. What would you like to add to our conversation today?
And as a matter of fact, I didn't even vote, rarely ever. And as I listened to the program over the years and grew older, I realized the importance of Christian voting. And your shows have helped me pick candidates with your guests and your comments and different things like that, so that I would know I was choosing a candidate that maybe had been handpicked by God. I would pray about it also.
Great. Fantastic.
And again, it sounds like you, when you first started listening, thought maybe you were a little bit out there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as Marlon used to say...
That is not an adjective I would use to describe you, Kerby.
Yeah, but as Marlon used to say, you got to listen to this a little bit, because one of the things I've noticed over the years is sometimes somebody will call in and say, this is the first time I heard the program, and I almost want to just say, okay, you need to listen for at least one more day before you call in, because sometimes they're just off the wall, because they're just going, who are these people? Where did this idea come from? And so that is certainly the case. When you first listen, you go, okay, what's that all about? And so that is certainly the case. And you can remember back in the 1980s, Marlon was taking on secular humanism. Mm-hmm. And okay, Tim LaHaye was talking about that, and Marlon was doing some interviews on it, but everybody else is going, what? I mean, I'm a humanitarian. What's that all about? Then he started taking on the New Age movement, and people go, New Age? What is this? And they started talking about the New World Order. And after a while, sometimes when we would take on another one of these issues, you could tell just even by the first couple of comments we get from people like, where did this come from? What are these ideas? How come I don't know about this? Why am I hearing about this for the very first time on Point of View? I still hear this every once in a while. Why am I hearing about this on Point of View and nowhere else? Sort of implying that you guys must be wrong. Everybody else is right. And now they've come to realize, no, there are all sorts of things that we have been on the cutting edge to address. And so I can imagine if you've not been very political and you hear Marlon talking about getting involved in these issues, you're probably going, what? Are we supposed to be doing that? And of course, that's one of the ministries I think this particular program has had.
Well, I mean, I think case in point is the issue of religious liberty, which we've talked about since the beginning. And now it's a mainstream issue that's even affecting presidential debates and campaigns, and media outlets, mainstream media outlets are even being forced to cover the issue of religious liberty. It's at risk and important, and we try to keep that before the people.
Speaking of the things we've posted on the website, I thought I'd mention that just real quickly. First of all, we have Kelly Shackelford's article that appeared in the Washington Times today. An alarming new era for religious liberty in America. Since he won't be with us because he'll be at the Values Voters, maybe you'll have him call in, but we'll certainly talk about that more in our weekend edition. We also have a couple of the videos there there, you can see some of these transformed lives. We've played some of these videos already, and you can actually see them on the website in case you would like to watch them again, and so we will certainly do that. We come back, maybe we'll have time to hear maybe from one other individual that has been profoundly influenced, but most importantly, we put you to the head of the line. So if you have a call and you've been waiting, you've been procrastinating, you're saying, should I call or shouldn't I? We'll give you that opportunity when we come back from a break, but then also we'll see if we can slip in at least one or two testimonies of very prominent people who said that they were profoundly influenced by Point of View. 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter with me. We'll take a break and be back with more right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Winding down our anniversary show today, 43 years since 1972, and we're going to continue on. But I thought just before we run out of time here, you might want to hear from a few individuals, and one that occurred to me is Robert Jeffress. Here's a man that I have such high respect for, pastor of First Baptist Church, and just fearless. I mean, an individual that goes on all sorts of different radio and television shows, whether they're going to be friendly to him or hostile to him. And we need more pastors to emulate him. And I thought, since we haven't heard from a pastor today, unless, well, I guess one of them might have been, I thought let's just for a minute hear what Robert Jeffress says about Point of View.
Point of View has been a part of my life since the days I was a student at Dallas Theological Seminary, and I always appreciated the unabashed, firm, courageous commitment this program had to the eternal truths of God's Word and taking those truths and applying them to current affairs. I have to believe that Point of View and their courageous stand for the truth of God's Word certainly helped me to understand my role as a pastor was to not just preach ivory tower sermons that are divorced from reality, but to look at the world through the lens of Scripture and see how God's Word applies to today's world. You know, in 1 Chronicles 12:32, we find a description of the sons of Issachar who understood their times and knew what they should do. And I believe Point of View helps equip Christians today to understand the times in which they're living and what, as God's people, they should be doing right now.
Pastor Robert Jeffress, and again, was listening to Point of View when he was a seminary student at Dallas Theological Seminary. Last time I was with Mike Huckabee, he reminded me that he used to listen to Point of View when he was a student at Southwestern Baptist Seminary. So you can see the impact this has had on future pastors, and in the case of Mike Huckabee, future governor, and then future presidential candidate. And so all of that goes back to some of the things they listened to when they listened to Marlon or you and me when they were in some of those situations. And of course, I used to interview Robert Jeffress when he was in Wichita Falls. And of course, now we have him in studio right here in Dallas.
Dr. Jeffress used the term understanding the times. And I think that is a term that can be applied to Point of View too. That we want to help our listeners and certainly people that like Robert Jeffress who are inspired by our program to bring that into their own ministry and to bring that understanding of the times into what they do. That's one of the reasons we exist.
Well, again, we've heard from a lawyer, we've heard from a pastor. Let's for a minute hear from a nurse, because you might remember Sherry Richard. She was on this program and used this program to really educate so many people about what is happening inside the womb. She's been on the program since then, but I thought for just a minute, let's hear what she has to say.
I thank God for Marlon and the staff who help broadcast Point of View. It's through their extensive research and documentation that Point of View exposes the deceptions and the truth of the important issues that threaten our freedoms in our nation. In fact, it was back in 1988, I remember while listening to Point of View, that I became educated on the deception and lies behind the abortion industry. I was so furious that the industry was claiming to be pro-choice, but not giving women the information to make simple, informed decisions. And when I had my abortions, they lied to me, and now as a monitors away from women concerning abortion so that the moving image wouldn't influence their choice. So it was through Marlon and the information that I learned from Point of View that I prayed for God to use my profession of ultrasound and my grief for my abortions to save babies and help educate women. And it was so funny because within a few months after producing Ultrasound, A Window to the Womb, Marlon had me on his show and literally moved thousands and thousands of videos within a few months. And in fact, it was through the encouragement and the financial resources I received from Point of View and Marlon that I was able to distribute these videos worldwide in 12 different languages.
You think of the interviews that over the years were done with Bernard Nathanson, with Sherry Richard, more recently with Lila Rose. I mean, young people that are pro-life, at least some of them maybe are pro-life simply because of the information that we have been able to get out over the years about the life of the child inside the womb.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power, I think, of radio and the airwaves. And, you know, we've got a lot of other now ways to get information out, which we use here at Point of View. But there's nothing like radio, is there? Just to, you know, you're busy, you're productive, you're doing something, but you can always have that radio on and you can be learning and taking in information and finding out about things like those videos that Sherry Richard distributed all around the world.
It's just incredible. One more I thought I would share, and that is Michelle Bachmann. You can remember when you first did an interview with her. That is that
she was nowhere near any political office at that point. She was just a mom trying to help Minnesota avoid a debacle in their education system.
And I remember the interview you did with her, and then, of course, then she runs and serves in the state legislature, then in the House of Representatives, presidential candidate. Let's hear from Michelle Bachmann.
I was about 19 years old when I first met my husband, and he brought me out to the farm in Wisconsin where he lived with his parents. And every day at noontime, the radio came on, and my in-laws had the radio tuned to the Christian radio station, and it was Marlon Maddox's Point of View that came on. So I was still getting my footing for my faith. And this was very important because what Point of View taught me was the intersection of current events with my faith in Jesus Christ. And I just loved the show. I loved Marlon Maddox's personality. He was cutting edge. All the new things that you'd hear about in the news, he would be talking about on the radio station, but from a biblical worldview perspective. He very profoundly shaped a lot of my thinking during that time, and we couldn't wait to listen to it. Kerby does such a fabulous job. I've enjoyed being on the show with Kerby. It's needed now more than ever because it seems like too few pastors are willing to say from the pulpit what they need to say today. That's why I think that Kerby Anderson, what he's doing on Point of View, is probably more needed now than ever because we need to be hearing this on the radio if we aren't going to be getting it from our pulpits.
And we've seen some very significant stories. That's Michelle Bachmann. We can think of others that were listening to this program and then later served in the Heritage Foundation, ran for political office, whatever it might be. And again, you've had a chance over the years to interview some of these individuals.
Yeah, it's great to, Michelle Bachmann articulates it so well, Kerby. We are needed now more than ever. We've got a lot of great pastors like Robert Jeffress across the country who are involving their congregation in issues and helping them get involved in the direction of the country. But there are a lot of pastors who just don't see the need to do that. They don't want to perhaps offend people, or they just don't think that's the role of the church. And so we can also encourage pastors to do that, and we can also just kind of be a substitute for that in some senses, where people can listen to Point of View and all the wonderful people that come to the microphone every week with you, Kerby, and learn how, in the various areas of interest. I mean, whatever you're interested in, we'll cover it here on Point of View.
As we said, there's no issue off the table. And back to those action items, there's no way that a pastor can say, if you call the White House right now, or if you call your two senators or your representative, you can address this issue. I mean, I'm not going to do that from the pulpit, but we have those action items that we talked about just a few minutes ago, because there's certainly quite a number that we can give people information about. And Pamela went through the long list. We have the viewpoint section. They can hear your commentary, hear my commentary. And of course, we have all sorts of videos and other resources. So please just recognize that we've posted a lot of that even today on Point of View, and go to pointofview.net. You can see some of the videos that we've pulled some of the audio from. You can also find that piece that was written by Kelly Shackelford on the very important issue of religious liberty that appeared in the Washington Times. And most importantly, Penna, I thank you for joining me today. I can't imagine doing it without you. So that was really great. And we're going to have our Friday weekend edition. So again, we're going to get to see you then. And so just before we run out of time, visit the website, pointofview.net. Listen to the commentaries. You might want to listen to this again. You can download the podcast and listen to it. You could download the Livecast. Go find our YouTube channel and watch it, and maybe pass it on to some others. Really appreciate the great work that happened behind the scenes, especially today. Appreciate the work from Andrew, Catherine, and Chris. Have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.
Riddle time. What is often misunderstood and ticks down faster than a Texas student's homemade clock? A Point of View matching challenge. Okay, that was a really bad attempt to get your attention. There are so many issues today where wisdom is needed. You need as many allies as you can get at a time like this, and I believe the nation needs Point of View. We have a friend who thinks so too. He believes it so much, he has put his money where his worldview is, and he is challenging you to do the same thing. For every gift you give, this friend will give an equal amount up to $50,000. Look, some have financial backhoes which dig with zeros on the end. If that's you, fire it up and dig. Many of us dig with teaspoons or fingernails. Bottom line, we need you to dig and give. We have just a few days left. Double your impact when you give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. That's 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Thank you.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.